Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Mr. Paramahamsa Parudikacharya Ashtotar to the Shishimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parudikacharya Ashtotar to the Shishimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So the number for asking questions is 858-291-9815. 858-291-9815. You can text those and we'll answer them about 8 o'clock. On this 31st day of March 2020 in SanDiego, reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are in chapter 12 entitled Devotional Service, text number 9. And if you have the same printing we have, it's on page 518. Atachittam samadhatum Nashaknoshi maistiram Abhyasi yoge natato Mamichaptum dhananjaya Atachittam samadhatum Nashaknoshi maistiram Abhyasi yoge natato Mamichaptum dhananjaya Hatachittam samadhatum Nashaknoshi maistiram Abhyasi yoge natato Mam ipchaptum dhananjaya Hatachittam samadhatum Nashaknoshi maistiram Abhyasi yoge natato Mamipchaptum dhananjaya. were the words. Ata, if therefore, chittam, mind, samadhatum, to fix, not shaknoshi, you are able, mayi, upon me, stiram, steadily, abhyasa yogena, by the practice of devotional service. Tataha, then, mam, me, itcha, desire, aptum, to get, dhananjaya, O winner of wealth, Arjun. Translation. My dear Arjun, O winner of wealth, if you cannot fix your mind upon me without deviation, then follow the regulative principles of bhakti yoga. In this way, develop a desire to attain me. Purport. In this verse, two different processes of bhakti yoga are indicated. The first applies to one who has actually developed an attachment for Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, by transcendental love. And the other is for one who has not developed an attachment for the Supreme Person by transcendental love. For this second class, there are different prescribed rules and regulations one can follow to be ultimately elevated to the stage of attachment to Krishna. Bhakti Yoga is the purification of the senses. At the present moment, in material existence, the senses are always impure, being engaged in sense gratification. But by the practice of Bhakti Yoga, these senses can become purified, and in the purified state, they come directly in contact with the Supreme Lord. In this material existence, I may be engaged in some service to some master, but I don't really lovingly serve my master. I simply serve to get some money. And the master also is not in love. He takes service from me and pays me. So there's no question of love. But for spiritual life, one must be elevated to the pure stage of love. That stage of love can be achieved by practice of devotional service, performed with the present senses. This love of God is now in a dormant state in everyone's heart. And there, love of God is manifested in different ways, but it is contaminated by material association. Now the heart has to be purified of the material association, and that dormant natural love for Krishna has to be revived. That is the whole process. To practice the regulative principles of Bhakti Yoga, one should, under the guidance of an expert spiritual master, follow certain principles. One should rise early in the morning, take bath, enter the temple, and offer prayers and chant Hare Krishna. Then collect flowers to offer to the deity, cook foodstuffs to offer to the deity, take prasadam, and so on. There are various rules and regulations which one should follow. And one should constantly hear the Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam from pure devotees. This practice can help anyone rise to the level of love of God, and then he is sure of his progress into the spiritual kingdom of God. This practice of Bhakti Yoga, under the rules and regulations, with the direction of a spiritual master, will surely bring one to the stage of love of God. Om Jnana Timarandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara, the disciplic succession. So this particular verse and purport more or less describes ISKCON. When, of course, there's a lot of underlying knowledge that is the foundation for this statement and of Krishna and this purport. There has to be faith. Faith that Krishna is God, I'm his eternal servant, I want to develop love for him and go back to Godhead. And, okay, I believe it, now what do I do? My mind is dragging me here, my senses are dragging me here, I have so many other things to do, and my mind is not able to instantly become completely absorbed in Krishna. That's what the first part of this verse is. If you cannot fix your mind upon me without deviation, which is what Krishna has already recommended several times in this chapter as the highest form of yoga, not the impersonal realization. It's not possible. Nashaknoshi mayi stiram. It's not possible to do it steadily. We can all do it for some time. We chant the holy name, we get absorbed, but then the mind wanders here, this and there. This is the sadhana. And the reason why it's not steady is because there are so many impressions that have entered the mind, this life, previous life. The senses are impure, meaning that they're attracted to the object of the senses. And so distraction is inevitable. So that's the sadhana. And there are various means. We learned from Prahlad Maharaj these 9 processes of devotional service. Every one of them is designed to help us to fix the mind on Krishna through a different activity: hearing, chanting, remembering, serving the lotus feet, becoming the friend. The whole deity worship involves all the senses: the vision, the touch with the heat, and the water. Of course, the prasadam, chanting the holy name, hearing the holy name, hearing the glories of the Lord. So all of those help to purify the senses with the aim of becoming fixed. The mind is fixed, constant remembrance. And that's what sadhana is all about. Prabhupada loved to quote this verse exactly in the theme of this purport. Atak Shri Krishna Namadi Nabave Grayam Indriyai Sevan Mukhi Jivado Swayam Eva Spuratyada. With our present senses, we cannot understand the real quality of the name, form, qualities of Krishna. Atta Shri Krishna Nam Adi, Adi means etc. Name, form, qualities, pastimes. But if one begins serving, especially with the tongue, Atta Shri Krishna Nambave Grayam Indriya, you can't grasp it, Grayam Indriya, with these senses. Sevan Mukhi Jivadho, if one begins serving, beginning with the tongue, chanting the name, tasting prasadam, then eventually Krishna will reveal himself. The whole point is that in bhakti, which is different from all the other processes, such as Ashtanga Yoga or Jnana Yoga, certainly the empirical efforts which you try to overcome the senses, by brute force, more or less. It's all on you. In other words, whatever will you can manage to bring. We're reading about Prithu. Of course, he was ultimately, gave that up for bhakti. But okay, it's the winter time. Let's go find a nice river and break the ice and stand in the water. That's a real challenge. It's summertime. Let's go find a desert and build some fires around it. And the whole purpose of it is to tame the senses and the mind, and by force fix on Krishna or fix on the absolute. So, but in bhakti, where there are austerities and there's yoga type practices. When we're sitting there chanting, sit properly, that also helps, all of these things. And certainly bringing the mind back under the control of the self. But the whole principle lays on or rests on the fact that we're really praying that Krishna will reveal himself to us. That's the import of this verse. When the senses are pure, and we're hearing purely, we're seeing Krishna purely, we're praying purely, then he will reveal himself. That's what this verse says. Swayam eva spodatyada. The Lord himself reveals. So this is the great advantage of the bhakti yogi over any of the yogis. And that is that the Lord really wants to reveal himself to us. And he's just waiting for that purity and that eagerness to be sentenced in the heart. And then he purifies and he reveals himself. Whereas the others, they're more or less on their own. And that's why they all ultimately fail, unless they come to bhakti. That's the whole point. So that's what this verse is all about. You will develop a desire to attain me. Follow the regulative principles of bhakti yoga. So Prabhupada, he mentions the fact that this love, this bhakti, this prema, is dormant in everybody. That's a wonderful understanding, is that all of us have this perfection. We just have to uncover it, like a jewel we're trying to uncover. It's buried in there. Lord Chaitanya is teaching to Sanatana Goswami, Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema Sadhya Kabunoi Shavanadi Shuddha Chitte Koreye Udoy. This is exactly relevant to what's being spoken here. The eternal perfection of Krishna Prema is not something to bring from outside. In this case, the word sadhya means something that you're going to attain that you don't already have. Sadhya kabunoi, by hearing and chanting, etc., one purifies the heart and it naturally awakens. Shravanadi means hearing, etc. Shuddha chitte, purification of the consciousness. Kareye udoy, it rises just like the sun or the moon rising. It's already there. So, but we have to attain the desire to attain Krishna. This comes out very graphically in the discussion between Ramananda Roy and Lord Chaitanya. where they get to the point, well, how does one really attain these highest states of prema bhakti? And it all depends on your desire for it, your greed. Krishna bhakti rasa bhavitamiti. That's the first line of the verse. And Prabhupada said this is the basis of the term Krishna consciousness. This Krishna bhakti rasa bhavitamiti. The mind absorbed in the bhava of Krishna bhakta rasa, the mellows of devotional service. Krishna bhakti rasa bhavitamati kriyatam yadi kutopi labhyate. If you can find it somewhere, you should purchase it. Kriyatam is to purchase. Yadi kutopi labhyate. Tattva laulyam api mulyam. But the only price, mulyam, is your laulyam, is your greed for it. That's exactly what's being spoken here. You will attain the desire, you will develop the desire to attain me. In other words, when the heart becomes purified, your desires become purified. And this is why the whole process is one of refinement and purification of desire. So I think we've discussed this before, and it's very prominent in the Bhagavad Gita and in Prabhupada's preaching, is that you have to start out from where everyone is if you're going to try to bring him to another spot. And so where are we? It's easy to understand that we're suffering, that there's suffering in this world. And most people just accept it as, well, that's life. There's ups and downs. Sometimes the suffering becomes extreme, and people become completely bewildered because their whole life is disjointed like it is right now. But so then the question arises for those who are really inquisitive: is it possible to end all this suffering? Is this really a given for life? In other words, in a materialistic society, it has to be a given, because that's all there is matter, and your consciousness, and you live once and that's it. So the first revolutionary idea is that no, we're not matter, we're spirit. We don't die, we're never born. And the mission of human life is to act in such a way that you break free of this bondage of birth and death, and you attain a state of unending happiness. Now, that requires faith to believe that there is such a thing like that. And that's why the presence of the realized souls is so important, is that if you can meet, even for a moment, I was just working with this verse in the Bhagavatam, and it appears 3 or 4 times, about the importance of association with the Bhagavat Sangi. A Bhagavat Sangi is an associate of the Lord, someone who's very close, It's a tulyama lavenapi naswargam napuna bhavan Bhagavat Sangi sangyasya martyanam mutashicha. So the translation is that the value, or a moment's association with a real associate of the Lord, a pure devotee, is so valuable that it cannot be compared with going to heaven or attaining even mukti, liberation from birth and death. What to speak of some material opulences that you may find in this world. And why is that? Because that can plant the seed. That you can get that seed of faith, or the bhakti lata bija. The seed. That seed is comprised of faith and the holy name, and the will and desire to practice. That's really the seed. And so you can get that from seeing someone who's actually living on a different plane. He's embodying some of these amazing things that you read. So that's why hearing the Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada was so eager to get the Bhagavad Gita as it is published. Even though it has so many flaws, publish it. Because it's so urgent. Time is of the essence. So why is this so urgent? Right here you can see. We got to the point of the 12th chapter here, and here these are practical instructions for all of us. If you notice, this chapter is really very accommodating. Krishna even has some good words for the impersonalists. Said, it's very difficult, but you can eventually achieve it if you're kind to everybody, don't become selfish, and you eventually come to me, as you were discussing this morning, and yet you have to eventually come to bhakti. But he's giving everyone a chance, and this is this famous passage, if you can't do this, do this, you can't do this, do this, So we're at that point, but this particular verse really covers all the neophyte bhaktas who are eager to advance. They have faith, but they're basically still in the shower, that whole analogy, there's a lot of purification. So that purification will result in the desire to attain Krishna. And proportionally the other material desires will wane. And how do we nourish that desire more is by hearing and chanting, by getting with devotees, doing the process of devotional service, in which we directly link to Krishna through the holy name in so many ways, and we feel the awakening of the desire to serve Krishna, to hear about Krishna, So that's what Krishna is talking about here. And Prabhupada, it's a beautiful purport. Bhakti yoga is the purification of the senses. The senses are always impure, not surprising. We spend so many lives in this material world. But by the practice of bhakti yoga, these senses become purified, and the purified state, they come directly in contact with the Supreme Lord. And this is another, factor, is that Krishna reaches out. He reaches out to us primarily through his pure devotees, through the Shastra, through the holy name, through the murtis, through the prasadam. All of the things that are directly related to him are identical with him in the sense they have the same power to purify us that he has. So that's the great value of Krishna consciousness. You can be attracted by anything. Something may really get you, like some people are really into the art. Probably so eager for the artists, the history. Because that in itself is a fascinating thing. As soon as someone contemplates the art, they're really relating to Krishna, purification begins. And so we have all the advantages. This is the great advantage of this process, is that it's variegated as the spiritual world. And when we get serious about it, we become regulated, then the purification can happen very quickly. There's a section in the at the end of the Bhagavatam. I think it's in the 12th or 13th chapter, I forget. I think it's 12th chapter, starting around 58. And it's all about the glories of hearing. I call it Krishna Katashtaka. Another 8 verses happen to be. And he starts out, Sankirtyamano Bhagavan Ananta Shutana Bhava Vasanan Hipungsang Pravishya Chittam Vidanoti Shesham Yatata Moko Bhamivati Vata. It starts out with Sankirtan. Those who glorify me, especially in congregation, or glorify the Lord, and hear of his great power, his glories, he enters their heart. It's very related. It's like that Shinvatam Sukanta Krishna verse. He enters their heart and cleanses away all the impurities and all of the suffering due to previous sinful activities. It's a complete cleansing process going on. Just as when the sun comes up, all the fog is dissipated, or a powerful wind can cleanse away everything. But it's very interesting the way it's constructed. It goes back and forth. Those words that don't glorify the Lord are false, harmful, useless. And Mrisha means false, and keep one in darkness. But on the other hand, Tadeva Satyam Tadohaiva Mangalam, Tadeva Punyam Bhagavad Gunodiyam, Tadeva Ramyam Ruchidang Nabang Nabang, Tadeva Shashwan Monaso Mahotsavam, Tadeva Shokarna Vashoshanang Nanang Yaduttama Shloka Yasho Anugiyate. Those words that glorify Uttama Shloka, he was glorified in the best of poetry, have these qualities. They are true. The truth relies in them. They are auspicious to hear. Tadeva Satyam Tadeva Mangalam. They bring piety just by hearing them. Bhakti piety that results in, Bhagavad Gunodiyam. They glorify the qualities of Bhagavan. Tadeva Ramyam. They're very attractive. Ruchiram. Tasty, delightful. Ruchiram Navang, ever fresh. You never get to the point of satiety, Navang Navang Tadeva Shashwang Manaso Mahotavam, an eternal festival for the mind. Shokarna Vashoshanang Nanang, they dry up the ocean of lamentation. These words. But on the other hand, Nayad Vachaschitta Badang Hare Yasho. Now, if you recognize that verse, that's the famous verse about the pilgrimage of crows that we heard way back in the first canto, in the 5th chapter. I don't know if you heard this, and Vishnu Chakravarti explained. So then for the next 3 verses, he repeats those verses. That those words that don't glorify Krishna, even though they're very nicely composed, they're like a pilgrimage of crows. they contaminate you. But those words that do glorify him, even if every verse is miscomposed, they're heard, chanted, and accepted by the great devotees. And then he speaks about naiskharmya, that there may be some unmotivated activity, but if it's devoid of any glorification of achyuta, it doesn't look very well. What to speak of fruit of activity? That's so those 3 verses are almost exactly like these 3 verses in the 5th chapter. And the reason why I'm emphasizing this with just a couple more verses is that the final verse talks about coming to the point of always remembering Krishna. It's the same principle as we find in the Bhagavad Gita. If you can't think of me all the time in samadhi, then do this. So he says, then he describes, Yashashriyame viparishamak paro varnashamacharata pakshutarishu avismati shridara padmayo gunanavara shavanarararibi. That if you fulfill all of the functions of varnashram very nicely, or you practice yoga, you sacrifices to go to heaven, the best you can do is get some fame and some opulence, which is ephemeral. But the sincere practice of hearing and chanting the glories of Krishna will bring you to the point of always remembering the lotus feet of Sridhar, which is a name for Vishnu. But the last verse speaks of Krishna, avismati, and here's the glories of always remembering Krishna, which develops through hearing and chanting. Avismati Krishna padaravindayo chinotya badhrani shashantanoti sattvasya shuddhim padamatma bhaktim jnanam cha vijnana viraga yuktam. So this constant remembrance of Krishna's lotus feet, which is what he says if you can't do right now, you should try, is developed through sincere hearing and chanting, basically, bhakti. And here's the benefits. Chinotya badhani, everything inauspicious is destroyed in your life. And shang tanoti. This word, sham, is the source of the word Shankara. Shankara is a name for Shiva. Very auspicious. He causes good fortune for everyone, Sham tanoti expands your good fortune. It purifies your existence, sattvasya shuddhim, and awakens padamatma bhaktim, your devotion to the Supreme Soul, Krishna. The first line speaks about Krishna's lotus feet. Characterized by knowledge, realized knowledge, jnana, vijnanam, and vairagya, detachment from everything else. So that constant remembrance of Krishna is not something that is easily attained, but it's kind of the fruit of the practice of bhakti yoga, and from there everything expands, all the different rasas and the things that we read about. So that's something that is also mentioned here. You can't get it right away, but you can develop the desire for it. So, okay, and Prabhupada talks about, basically he's outlining ISKCON as he created it. Early morning bath, enter the temple, offer prayers, chant Hare Krishna, collect flowers, offer to deity, cook food stuff. This is happening at the last paragraph here. Take prasadam. Okay. So, let's see. Okay. This looks like some. Okay, so this is a question from Tapas. Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dandavat Pranam. Thanks for a wonderful, blissful class. Still going on. In other yugas, we see examples of sadhus like Valmiki Muni doing sadhana for many thousands of years, but we are more fallen than them. Then how long will it take for us to attain Krishna prema by bhakti? Your servant, Tapas. The famous how long question. You can't answer that question, how long. It all depends on our sincerity and our determination, to follow the principles. Prabhupada said it can happen in a second, or it can take thousands of births. It's all up to us, But what we should be have firm faith in that this is the most efficacious path for this age, especially. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has given us this practical path based on hearing and chanting and dancing and chanting Hare Krishna. And so that this is the way in which we can actually attain these wonderful states that we read about. And it doesn't depend on anything material. It's always auspicious to be as Krishna conscious as possible in every moment. There's always a Krishna conscious way of being at every moment. And the wonderful thing about what Prabhupada gave us, he gave us the structure. How to live in such a way that you have the best chance of developing devotional service. It's not so easy because it's in the mode of goodness. Just for us to come to the mode of goodness is a big struggle. But that is a foundation upon which real bhakti can be built. So how long? It's up to us. If we surrender fully and practice with great enthusiasm and patience and determination. That verse, Utsaha nishayadaya tattat karma bhavartanad, is interesting because the first line says enthusiasm, determination, and patience. But all of those have to do with activity. Enthusiasm, determination. You're determined to do something and not let anything else get in the way. And of course, patience means that you have to. That goes with determination over time. In relate to what? Tat karma pavartanat. In relation to all of the prescribed activities for sadhana bhakti. That's where the enthusiasm is to come. And it's not easy. Sometimes it's a drag because we're in Maya or in the modes or something. We ate too much Sunday feast, and but that's you have to be enthusiastic anyway. You have to be determined to go through that and change our ways so that we can be more steady. And sangha tyagat, and giving up this bad association. This is the most dangerous thing in this age. It's because of the internet, because of the way things are set up. The best association and the bad association is at everyone's fingertips. It used to be you joined up, and you were like in a bubble. Yamaraj Prabhu, he told me at one time, he went to New Vrindavan. For like several years, he had no idea what was going on in the outside world. I wasn't quite like that. I was living in Brooklyn. But in one sense, it's very good because it's like a concentrated dose. It's like that becomes your world, and if you surrender to it, you can make advancement. But on the other hand, with the internet, especially now, people are huddling in their homes. Well, they can get sangha. They can see the deities. They can, through the internet. So it can be a great blessing. It all depends on what we choose to do. Nowadays, which button you press is your destiny. Which one of those keys do you press? When you go to hell with porn sites, and the other go to dandavas.com. So that's really what it takes, is to always press the right buttons, especially Tapas, who's a computer man. Let's see, any other questions? So it's as quick as... Yeah, he just wrote in. Okay. Go ahead.
I was downloading... Anyway, I was using this website to download YouTube lectures onto it as an MP3, and sometimes it'll have advertisements. And one time it had two advertisements, right, side by side. And one says, it's like a little picture of like an email inbox. With it says, one message from God. Like, click here, see what God wants you to know. And then right next to it said, cute girls in SanDiego. So it had two options, two advertisements.
There you go.
It was quite funny.
Which one? Am I going to hell or am I going to go back to God?
I saved it as a screenshot. Yeah, I think I sent it to Bala.
All right. Do you want to get a book? Give me a book. All right, we'll go on to text 10. All right, we're on page 519. All right, so here, this is, ISKCON, text 9. Now we're moving a little down the scale. Abhyasepyas samartosi mad karma paramo bhava madhartam api karmani kurvan siddhamavapsyasi. If you cannot practice the regulations of bhakti yoga, then just try to work for me, because by working for me, you will come to the perfect stage. Purport. One who is not able even to practice the regulative principles of bhakti yoga under the guidance of a spiritual master can still be drawn to this perfectional stage by working for the Supreme Lord. How to do this work has already been explained in the 55th verse of the 11th chapter. That was the final verse, remember it? Prabhupada says this is the essence of ISKCON, of Krishna consciousness, of the Bhagavad Gita. All right, we'll review it. 11:55? mat karmakrin, mat paramo, mat bhakta sangha bhajita. One should be sympathetic to the propagation of Krishna consciousness. There are many devotees who are engaged in the propagation of Krishna consciousness, and they require help. So even if one cannot directly practice the regulative principles of bhakti yoga, he can try to help such work. Every endeavor requires land, capital, organization, and labor. Just as in business, one requires a place to stay, some capital to use, some labor, and some organization to expand, so the same is required in the service of Krishna. The only difference is that in materialism, one works for sense gratification. The same work, however, can be performed for the satisfaction of Krishna, and that is spiritual activity. If one has sufficient money, he can help in building an office or temple for propagating Krishna consciousness. Or he can help with publications. There are various fields of activity, and one should be interested in such activities. If one cannot sacrifice the results of his activities, the same person can still sacrifice some percentage to propagate Krishna consciousness. This voluntary service to the cause of Krishna consciousness will help one to rise to a higher state of love for God, whereupon one becomes perfect. So I remember back in New York, there's this one devotee. He's a senior to me. He joined in about 70 or something. And he was running the store. They had a nice gift shop there. This is the 55th Street Temple. And whatever come in, and devotees who would come, anyone would come in, all kinds of people would come into the store. And when he saw someone who was maybe a repeat customer, someone who he knew, and he had some relationship with, he would open up this purport and read it to them and see, ask for a donation. And he had good success, because this is exactly the whole impetus that Prabhupada started with the life membership, somehow to raise funds. It was Krishna's arrangement that Srila Prabhupada, he was a pure Vaishnava, of course, but he had this whole business background, unlike many of his godbrothers who were, they studied more but Prabhupada had spent a whole life as a businessman. And ISKCON, in many cases, he was talking about, what you need to run a business. And in many cases, that's what we needed. You needed some funds, to expand, to build a temple, buy books, print the books, And the money was always spent for Krishna. But in many ways, it was, the business acumen. Like that whole fight in Bombay, that was, Prabhupada was such a, he wasn't going to be cheated, and he knew exactly what to do, install the deities immediately, because that would, the people would be hesitant to try to move those deities, so they tried. So it was, exactly what was needed to really start a worldwide organization that required capital and, the workers with the devotees, of course. But that's what Krishna is talking about here. Try to work for me, because by working for me you will come to the perfect stage. So this is, someone who just is not able to really take up full-time devotion, regulated devotional service. But they want to be Krishna conscious. They know the importance. They're chanting to some degree, and so they can make advancement by giving something, giving time, giving Lakshmi. And by working for me, you will come to the perfect stage. So all of that is counted. As soon as you give some of your hard-earned money to Krishna, then Krishna reciprocates by making, first of all, the very act means you're less detached. That's kind of an act of renunciation right there. And so there's a taste to it, and the result is, because all of us have experienced, you go out of your way, you do some more austere service, and what happens? You have a little more taste for the holy name. The deities seem to be smiling more to you. I like to tell this story of my old friend Dravida Dasa in Miami. He joined in like '69. He's been there ever since. So he had various functions there. He was the president for a while and was a pujari. So he told this story how he would one of his services was cooking some of the deity sweets every day. So as it often happens, one day I think two of the other cooks couldn't make it. Maybe they got sick. They were traveling Sankirtan or something, and so suddenly it was all on him to make the burfi, and we used to make pera. I don't know if you ever know what pera was. Pera is another kind of sweet, of course, sandesh. And so there was a variety. So he had to cook like all night, to make everything for the deities. So the next morning he's taking the sweets on the altar, to place them on the plates. He looked at the deities and he was shocked. Krishna was smiled. He seemed to be smiling from ear to ear. In other words, that smile, which is always there, he had the inspiration or the purity to suddenly experience it much more directly. So that's how Krishna reciprocates. He takes away your material desire, and he gives you more taste for everything having to do with Krishna. You're more eager to be with the devotees, to hear and chant, to do every service, And that's the reciprocation he gives you. He increases the desire to attain him, which is in the previous verse. So here, this is a different level, but the karmis, they're working for the fruit of things. So when one knows the importance of Krishna consciousness and he gives some of that hard-earned wealth or time for Krishna, then that's a major step forward, and Krishna reciprocates by giving you more taste, more determination to chant more seriously and become more involved. And eventually, siddhim is there. You'll eventually attain the perfection. So it's similar, the same thing there. Even at the beginning, he's talking about even the impersonalists, they eventually, will achieve perfection if they come to me, right? They eventually come to me. Well, you're not going to come to Krishna unless you become a bhakta, But if they're sincere and they do welfare work for everybody, then they can come. But here it's much more relevant to our own situation, because I started out doing that. I would come to the temple, I'd give a donation here or there, and so I didn't feel Krishna awakening my heart right away, but I really felt the devotees really liking me so much more. And that itself was a big draw to bring me in, So Krishna's got something for everybody in this chapter. Everybody can enter into the house of bhakti. That's great. Okay. All right, moving right along. Now we go down even a further step. Text 11. Ataitadyapashaktosi kartam madyogamashitaha sarvakarma palatyagam tata kuryatatmavan. If, however, you are unable to work in this consciousness of me, then try to act giving up all results of your work and try to be self-situated. So here it's not, it's come down to the bottom rung here. Purport, it may be that one is unable even to sympathize with the activities of Krishna consciousness because of social, familial, or religious considerations, or because of some other impediments. If one attaches himself directly to the activities of Krishna consciousness, there may be objections from family members or so many other difficulties. So we know that's happened recently. For one who has such a problem, it is advised that he sacrifice the accumulated result of his activities to some good cause. Such procedures are described in the Vedic rules. There are many descriptions of sacrifices and special functions for the full moon day, and there is a special work in which the result of one's previous action may be applied. Thus one may gradually become elevated to the state of knowledge. It is also found that when one who is not even interested in the activities of Krishna consciousness gives charity to some hospital or some other social institution, he gives up the hard-earned results of his activities. That is also recommended here because by the practice of giving up the fruits of one's activities, one is sure to purify his mind gradually. And in that purified stage of mind, one becomes able to understand Krishna consciousness. Of course, Krishna consciousness is not dependent on any other experience, because Krishna consciousness itself can purify one's mind. But if there are impediments to accepting Krishna consciousness, one may try to give up the results of his actions. In that respect, social service, community service, national service, sacrifice for one's country, etc., may be accepted so that someday one may come to the stage of pure devotional service to the Supreme Lord. In the Bhagavad Gita 1846, we find it stated, Yatak prabhittir bhutanam. If one decides to sacrifice for the supreme cause, even if he does not know that the supreme cause is Krishna, he will come gradually to understand that Krishna is the supreme cause by the sacrificial method. So whenever I read this purport, I always think of one devotee, well, remain nameless, who was a very serious scholar in New York State, PhD. And then there was this flood there was a flood in that area. And it was, you know, sometimes these local catastrophes, they can bring people together in the community, you know, so everyone had to get out there and do the sandbag thing, you know, and so, and that's exactly what is mentioned here. You know, you're sacrificing for some higher cause. It had nothing to do with Krishna directly. But that kind of opened up a channel in his heart, you know, and because suddenly there was a different dimension there of experience, of sacrificing for a higher cause, and the community relationship. You know, it's similar to what Prabhupada is talking here. Let's see, social service, community service, national may be accepted, so that someday one may come to the stage. So shortly after that, you know, a very inquisitive mind, he was in a bookstore and he saw the Bhagavad Gita, you know, and he had heard about it, you know, and otherwise he hadn't been interested in it, but it awakened more interest in that kind of thing, and that was his portal by which he really became interested and eventually joined up. And so that, you know, because the real danger, the danger in the material world is that you become more and more selfish, you become demonic, you become, you know, cruel. You can go down that route also, you know, depending on. So the opposite of that is self-sacrifice and helping others, and, you know, like that. It's not transcendental in of itself, but it prevents you from going down the demonic route, which just results in lower birth and, you know, perpetuating that thing. So Krishna is even giving total atheists here, you know, if you're unable to work in this consciousness of me, then try to act giving up the results of your work and try to be self-situated. So he's trying to, you know, he's advising, don't become just a self-centered, you know, person who he'll describe in chapter 16, because that's very dangerous. So that's the lowest rung. And then he's coming up now, and then he'll describe pure devotion, starting at 13 to 14. Okay. Well, we might as well go on, unless we have any questions. Okay. Not yet. Okay. Shreyo hi jnanam adhyasad jnana dhyanam vishishyate dhyanat karma palatyagas tyagat chantiranantaram. If you cannot take to this practice, then engage yourself in the cultivation of knowledge. Better than knowledge, however, is meditation, and better than meditation is renunciation of the fruits of action. For by such renunciation one can attain peace of mind. Purport. As mentioned in the previous verses, there are two kinds of devotional service: the way of regulative principles and the way of full attachment in love to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. For those who are actually not able to follow the principles of Krishna consciousness, it is better to cultivate knowledge, because by knowledge one can be able to understand his real position. Gradually knowledge will develop to the point of meditation. By meditation one can be able to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead by a gradual process. In the cultivation of knowledge there are processes which make one understand that one himself is the Supreme, and that sort of meditation is preferred if one is unable to engage in devotional service. If one is not able to meditate in such a way, then there are prescribed duties, as enjoined in the Vedic literature, for the Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras, which we shall find in the last chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. But in all cases, one should give up the result or fruits of labor. This means to employ the result of karma for some good cause. In summary, to reach the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the highest goal, there are two processes. One process is by gradual development, and the other process is direct. Devotional service in Krishna consciousness is the direct method, and the other method involves renouncing the fruits of one's activities. Then one can come to the stage of knowledge, then to the stage of meditation, then to the stage of understanding the Supersoul, and then to the stage of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One may take either the step-by-step process or the direct path. The direct process is not possible for everyone, therefore the indirect process is also good. It is, however, to be understood that the indirect process is not recommended for Arjuna, because he is already at the stage of loving devotional service to the Supreme Lord. It is for others who are not at this stage. For them the gradual process of renunciation, knowledge, meditation, and realization of the Supersoul and Brahman should be followed. But as far as the Bhagavad Gita is concerned, It is the direct method that is stressed. Everyone is advised to take to the direct method and surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. So, practically speaking, we see that this indirect method is very difficult in this age. People get diverted too easily. We need the very powerful process of sankirtan, congregational chanting, and direct bhakti to really attract someone to become interested. And as far as developing knowledge, well, this is what all these books are for. If someone really becomes a little interested, a little curious, you can get a book, and then you're getting the full message right there. You don't have to, you're not going the gradual. The present age is so disturbed and confusing that it really has to be the direct process that it has a good chance of really converting someone, attracting someone to take up Krishna consciousness. So we have a few minutes. I'll share a few poems. I don't know if I did this one, but here's a verse from the Pradjapali I've been touting as what we need in this time of stress. And you've heard it before, but I don't know if everyone's heard it out there. And this compares to the Kali age. I went to a great forest fire. Aho bir nakale viduyate sudha sudharam horadam pade pade. Dine dine chandana chandra Dine dine chandana chandra shitalam yasho yashoda rasikanda giyate. Because at every step they drink a flood of wondrous nectar sweet, whose cooling power sandal paste enhanced with camphor can't defeat. They feel as if the raging blaze of Kali's days had ne'er begun. How blessed are they who fill their days with praise of Shri Yashoda's son. So this is the way in which we can weather the storm. The cooling, soothing nectar of Krishna Katha, glorification of Krishna, can help us to get over this difficulty. And this is what material world is all about, is that there's dangers at every step, as we were discussing on Sunday. And the only way to survive in that, get over the ocean of danger, is by taking shelter of Krishna's lotus feet. Samashtaye padaballavaplavam mahatpadam punyasho marare bhavambude vatsapadam padam 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 yanvipadam natesham. For those who take full shelter of the lotus feet of Murari, the enemy of the Mura demon, the boat of the lotus feet, then the ocean of samsara, of this age, shrinks down to the water in the calf's hoofprint. Not for them is this place where there's danger at every step, because they've gone to the supreme abode. So let's take full shelter. Okay, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Hari Bol.